so hard. Ooh, Lord, my trouble so hard. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Ooh, Lord, my trouble so hard. Ooh, Lord, my trouble so hard. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Ooh, Lord, my trouble so hard. Ooh, Lord, my trouble so hard. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Went down the hill of the deep, so God had been day all day. Went down the hill of the deep, so God had been day all day. Ooh, Lord, trouble so hard. Ooh, Lord, trouble so hard. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Ooh, Lord, trouble so hard. Ooh, Lord, trouble so hard. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. When it didn't stay long, looked over there and brother was dead. When it didn't stay long, looked over there and brother was dead. Ooh, Lord, my trouble so hard. Ooh, Lord, my trouble so hard. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Ooh, Lord, my trouble so hard. Ooh, Lord, my trouble so hard. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Ooh, Lord, my trouble so hard. Ooh, Lord, my trouble so hard. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Ooh, Lord, my trouble so hard. Ooh, Lord, my trouble so hard. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Ooh, Lord, my trouble so hard. Ooh, Lord, my trouble so hard. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Don't nobody know my trouble but God.
Okay, hi everyone. So, today I'm gonna talk, well, my project's about the civil rights movement, and I'm gonna talk about events that happened during the civil rights movement. And I'd just like to say that the civil rights movement is one of my favorite topics in American history, or history itself. It's one of the most interesting topics. I just love it. So that's why I pretty much chose it. So, okay, so the events I'm going to talk about are the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education and school segregation. And then I'm going to talk about 1955 Emmett Till. And then I'm going to talk about 1955 Rosa Parks story. And then I'm going to talk about 1960 HBCU students stage lunch counter sit-ins, and 1961 Freedom Riders, and 1963 Bull Connor authorizes the use of fire hose and attacks dogs on protesters. Alright, so I'm just going to explain like what happened in those events. Just a basic summary. So first off, Brown versus Board of Education. I have everything on Microsoft Word, so in different links, not all together, because my computer's just annoying like that. But, alright. Okay, so basically, Linda Brown, her parents wanted to enroll her into a white people's school, so they wouldn't let her in because she was black. So they decided, her parents and 13 other students tried to do the same thing. They wanted to enroll her into a white people's school, but they didn't get in because they were black, even though how qualified they were. They were very qualified. They just didn't let them in because they were black. So Oliver Brown, Linda Brown's father, and her decided that they wanted to make a lawsuit about that. They wanted to file a lawsuit, and they wanted to file a lawsuit to end the segregation, because everyone was sick of segregation. They don't get good education just because they were black, and I'd be mad too. So since Linda Brown was the first person in this case, they named the case after her, Brown versus Board of Education, and the Brown versus Board of Education was 4 years timeline. The first year was 1950. That's when they decided the parents wanted to enroll their kids, and they didn't get accepted. So in 1951, that's when the lawsuit started, and with Linda Brown's Oliver Brown and other parents. And then 1952, the Supreme Court heard from the lawyers and stuff. So that's how it basically got serious and started. So then in 1952, one justice died, so they had to replace them, and then in 1954 the case ended, and it ended in favor of Linda Brown and the other blacks near her, and they could all go to whatever school they wanted. Well, they could enroll in whatever school they were qualified for. Okay, Emmett Till. So basically the story of Emmett Till was, he was a 14-year-old black boy, he was a little kid, who was brutally murdered in Mississippi after he was reported for flirting with a white woman. And he was reported for flirting with a white girl, so cops bursted into his home and murdered him and killed him. So that was really sad. And he wasn't from Mississippi, that's the thing. He was from Chicago. He came to visit his grandparents for a little while, and I'm guessing that in Chicago the segregation was a little different than how it was in Mississippi, so that's how it got really out of hand, because he didn't know that it was, he didn't know that he couldn't flirt with white girls, but he's a guy, so he was brutally murdered for flirting with a white girl, so that's his story. And now I'm going to talk about the Rosa Parks bus boycott. So what happened in this, well, everyone knows the story of the Rosa Parks bus story, so I'll just explain it more. Basically, Rosa Parks was a woman who she just wanted segregation. She just wanted to stop segregation in a way. Like, she wanted to do something about segregation. So one day she got on the bus, and the bus back then it was kind of racist because the bus was split into two halves. The front was for the white people, and the back was for the black people. And black people who wanted to get on had to go on the bus from the front to pay. Then they'd have to get off and ride from the back. They couldn't walk through. So, what happened? So when and they would always sometimes drive off without them. They were just really, really, they were just really rude to the black people. So one day Rosa Parks got on the bus, and she was sitting in the first row for the black people. So it was the first row, was like behind the last row of the white people. And so the bus started getting really crowded in the white people section. So a white guy came on, and the bus driver told black people, like a bunch of black people in the back, to stand up, like the black people in the front row to stand up. So they emptied 4 rows, except Rosa Parks decided to sit down, and she was like, I'm not getting up. He wants to sit, he can sit next to me. There's four rows right next to me. He could sit down. And he's like, no, you need to get up so he can sit down. And then she was like, no, I'm not getting up. He can sit next to me. So she decided to be a little stubborn. And then he called the cops on her, the Montgomery police. And then so the cops came and arrested her. And then that's when they decided to make the that's when they arrested her. That's when everyone decided to to do the Freedom Riders, which we talk about in a minute, right after I talk about the sit-ins, because I organized that wrong. But so that's how it happened. That's the Rosa Parks story, but it's not done. This is just how it started. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the sit-ins. So what happened was that 4 college freshmen, Joseph McNeil, Franklin McCain, David Richmond, and Ezell Blair Jr. So this was on February 1st, 1960. They walked into, they went to a lunch counter, and at that time, black people couldn't just sit down and eat. They sit, pay, and then they can't eat on the counters. So they couldn't be served. They couldn't be served, but they can get food. They couldn't get served, if that makes any sense. But they decided that they'd ask to be served anyway, even though they knew they wouldn't, but they wanted to change something. They wanted to make a change in segregation. So they sat down anyway, and they would not get up. They just sat down on the counter till the lunch thing closed, till the restaurant thing closed. So they just sat all day, and they would not get up. They were just protesting. They're sitting down. Everyone, and the waiters threw coffee, food at them, and ice cream, and it was awful. So, like, later on, that was like the first day how it happened. And sooner or later, the sit-ins became a huge thing. There was like 3,000 people doing it. It ended up with 70,000 participants doing this. They would just sit all day on the counters, and they're just like, we're not getting up for nobody. So they're just sitting down all day until the store closed, and they would let them know that the next day they're gonna come back and sit down. And then now for the Freedom Riders. So after the Rosa Parks story, the black people decided, you know what, we're gonna show these white people that we're not getting on the buses. So they decided they're not getting on the buses at all. They're just they would walk to school, they'd carpool, they would and they were happy about it, so they would not go on the bus. So eventually the buses went out of business, and they needed so a lot of buses went out of business because the black people would not get on, and the KKK, Ku Klux Klan, would find these black people walking. They'd kill them. They'd 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 burn them. They'd throw water hoses at them. They'd make their dogs attack them. Like the little kids, they would walk with their parents to school. Well, they'd walk alone. They were like little 7-year-olds, and dogs would just come attack them and kill them. And the Birmingham cops, they would just take these really strong hoses and hose everyone down, and it was really painful because it's like, I guess it was really hot, or it was just really pressurized. Leave. Hey, I'm ready. Get out of my shop. Leave. Leave! I'm gonna look stupid. I don't care. So anyway, what happened was that, oh yeah, so they started segregating against the people by hosing them down, the black people, because they wouldn't ride the buses. But at the same time, they were just doing it because they were racist like that. And that's basically what happened with Freedom Riders. But, so, the Freedom Riders, yeah, so that's basically what happened. So now to talk about the, Birmingham campaign. This is basically what happened during the Freedom Riders. The Birmingham police, they would just attack any black person on the street. They'd hose them down with really pressurized water hoses. They'd have dogs, like really hungry, vicious dogs, attack black people. They would, they'd go into people's houses and throw these giant, those glass bottles that would have fire and oil in them. They'd throw them at houses and burn up everything. And it was a really scary ride, but since a lot of black people were together, some people could just like walk away from it, and some people were all alone, so they would just end up dying or really brutally injured. But when people would walk around in groups, they were a lot safer because it's like 20 people against like 3 KKK members. It was hard, and that's how it went down. And the last event I'm going to talk about is the KKK. Basically, this was a group of white people. They would wear these white ghost outfits, and they would kill all these. Their jobs were just to go out and kill black people, hurt them, murder them. They just believed that only white people should live. That's basically, they hated black people. And if a black person just walked by, did nothing to them, they will hose them down. They will take guns and shoot them down. They were awful. So, stop! And, yeah, so that's what the KKK was all about. And I don't think the KKK still exists, but there's a few members, but they don't do anything now. And basically the KKK, not only the KKK were these kinds of people, it was the Birmingham police did that too. They would go off and hose everyone. So black people were really like, a lot of them would get hurt just walking to school, even the little baby kids. High school students, like, you'd go into class and like 20 students in your class would be missing because they got caught by the KKK, hosed down and hurt. So that's basically what happened. And then, yeah, so that's basically the few events I've been talking about for the Civil Rights Movement, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the video.